Nomu. Kurogiri.
Nomu. Uragiri.
Let's clear this level and go home.
Now, Attack on Titan was my first non-shonen anime, and recently I left the rock I was living under to finish the series, and good God was I disappointed. But we'll talk about that in a bit. Remembering that the earlier seasons were peak, to say the least, because I very much enjoyed them, I decided to rewatch the series because I believe that the show fell off. But having rewatched it, I came to a realization that the fall wasn't from a high place. But demigod, you devilishly handsome stud. Anime is subjective and there's no way to objectively criticize it. Also, is your life that crap that you shit on a beloved anime? To that I say yes, 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 and 100% yes. Now, without further ado, let's start with the plot. Now, it starts off on giving a bit of information about the world, but apparently 100 years ago, Titans started appearing and wanted all the smoke. Sadly, humanity ran behind some big-ass walls. That's a sad case. Could be me, though. We first see the main character, Eren, with his sister Mikasa and friend Armin, playing outside when suddenly this colossal titan appears and gently opens the front gate, allowing other titans to start pouring in like it's Black Friday. Knowing that his mother is a certified MILF, Eren rushes home to check up on her. But sadly, a boulder hit his house and now his mother is trapped under it. He tries lifting up the boulder, but sadly, bro hasn't seen a gym in a very long time. But then this titan uses like a map or something and finds them. Luckily, though, a scout arrives to help them, but nah, I'm joking. He decides to play the hero. But then he realizes that the writers set him up for failure, having him fight like 50 weight classes. So he decides to dip, taking Eren and Mikasa with him. I mean, it's the least he can do, right? And no, the least he could do is try to help her out. Because we're shown earlier that Eren could almost lift, and he's like 9. I mean, although I'm built like a child from Berserk or an African kid, I'm 22 and I can certainly lift more than a 9-year-old child. Put in some effort or something. Anyway, Eren watches his mother get eaten, and he vows to kill every Titan that crosses his path. I know the other Titans are confused as hell, like, all of us? I mean, Harness is the one who didn't save your mother, and she and your stepmother ate your mother. Wait, I've seen that somewhere. Anyway, fast forward to like 2 years, and they go to military school, and we get introduced to a cast of characters, and I mean a cast of characters. And they train, and 5 years later, they graduate. Now, I'm not one to complain about time skips, but goddamn, episode 4 is a mess. Nothing like a montage was shown to indicate a time skip or anything like that. I only found out that 5 years had passed, like at the end of the episode. The Colossal Titan sneaks up behind Eren and blows a hole in the wall. Again, bro's bag of tricks is very limited. Out here spamming the same move. With that, Eren's group springs into action, but they quickly realize that shit ain't sweet out here. Most of them are just disposable characters. While being digested, even Eren is second guessing if he's the main character or not, wondering when his plot armor will start kicking in. Anyway, the Titan that ate Eren randomly becomes a vegan and leaves Armin there for some weird reason, and luckily no other Titan in the area finds him. Armin is said to zoned out, wondering to himself what's up a show kills the main character. But anyway, we get taken to the inner gate, and we see that the people are still trying to evacuate, but they can't since there's a carriage blocking their path. And this angers me, but let's not talk about it now. Mikasa pulls a whole ass sword and solves the problem. After that, we get a small flashback from her childhood. Apparently, they broke into her house and promoted her into an orphan. Luckily, though, Eren saved her and gave her the scarf, and then she vowed to be his ride or die. And damn, that's all it takes? I mean, we then get this emotional.
Eren, as long as you're part of my life, I can fight to the bitter end.
Damn, how do we tell her? Unsurprisingly, after she finds out that Eren is dead, she goes on this rampage and gets herself in trouble. But luckily, though, this mysterious Titan comes in and saves her at the last second. And I wonder who that could be. Anyway, the Titan goes on a rampage and finally tires out, and oh my god, look, it's Eren. After bringing Eren up and over the wall, he almost gets killed by friendly fire. But luckily, this commander saves him in time. In exchange, he only has to plug up the wall. Anyway, 2 episodes later, Eren finally lifts up the boulder and plugs up the wall, securing humanity's first victory. And I mean, like, damn, that's a sad case. Y'all been fighting for 100 years, and this is the first victory? So y'all have been losing for 100 years. Back to back? That is crazy. Anyway, Eren wakes up, tied up on some freaky stuff, and is brought to trial for being different and edgy. Anyway, after enjoying some public humiliation, Eren joins the scout regiment. Anyway, something happens and Commander Irvin discovers that there's an imposter among them. So he makes this elaborate plan where they use Eren as bait and go out into the open. And sure enough, a female Titan appears. And goddamn, I need me a snow bunny. Anyway, they fail to capture her and she pulls an Uno reverse card on them. And then Levi pulls an Uno reverse card on her and saves Eren. Anyway, they discover that it's Annie and Eren fights her and he wins, but her bags of tricks is very deep, so she pulls out this crystal thing where she protects herself. The season ends and we get this big reveal that there's the Titan in the wall. Anyway, that's the plot summary. Now, onto the critiquing. The plot for AOT is a breath of fresh air, I won't lie. It's not some series of events that are strung together and called into a season. No. There's actually cause and effect. Most of the events are believable as well. After the gates are destroyed, the kids go to train, and 5 years later, the gates get destroyed again. I don't know why they waited 5 years, but 5 years later, the gates get destroyed again. This causes the other Titans to come in again, and which then causes them to eat Eren, which then causes him to discover his powers, and so on and so forth. But the point is that there's cause and effect throughout the entire season. Or how after Irvin discovered that there's an imposter, he creates this plan, which then leads to the other series of events. Cause and effect. That is good. But sadly, the glue that binds these events isn't necessarily that good. To get this effect, the plot had to be contrived in a few places. Sometimes the plot doesn't make any sense, or it makes characters do some questionable things. For example, after Eren gets eaten, the Titan that ate him leaves Armin, and the only reason I could think why is because he had to tell Mikasa that Eren died. So we can get the following scene, or like how after Eren passes out. Anyway, I digress. Another scene that doesn't make any sense is that after Annie beats Eren, she just leaves him there, even though he can't fight back. And instead of taking him, she just runs away, despite wanting him earlier for like half an arc. My point is this: the plot is great, except for a few plot holes that the writers couldn't be bothered to fix. Gets a 6 out of 10. A famous author once said, "You only need to focus on building colorful characters, and they'll figure out what to do." The problem with AOT is just there's too many characters, and the writers often don't know what to do with them, and it leaves some of them not getting proper character arcs or even getting development, so we don't get a real sense of who they are. Now, let me explain. Let's start with Eren. When I first watched the show, I fell in love with Eren almost instantly. Pause. But now, every time bro opens his mouth, it just comes across as ungrateful, naive, and this little brat who goes around throwing temper tantrums. And you don't really see him grow as a character throughout the season. And it's only at the end where we see some form of growth, but I don't know if that's just him being sad. Let's go to our supporting characters. Let's start with Armin. Armin by far is the most annoying one of them all. Now, Armin, through and through, is a character trope no matter how you see it. And you know which character trope I'm talking about. The physically weak, socially awkward, yet intellectual type of characters. He's one of those. And the show doesn't flush him out to be anything more and even fails to do so. You know, the golden rule of not just writing, but cinema itself is show, don't tell. And in episode 4, Aaron tells us that
Now you're just being stupid. Come on, you're not a fighter. Your life is with books.
now, let me preach for a sec. But then, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you, have you actually seen Armin read a book? Besides the one with pictures that he read as a kid with Aaron. Are we supposed to go on Aaron's notion that Armin truly loves book, even though we ourselves haven't seen him read a single book? The fact of the matter is, Armin is a two-dimensional character at best. I ask you this as well. What do you think Armin does on his free time? I, for one, can't imagine him doing anything. He's not reading books now, that's for sure. And I rest my case. Now, let us move on. This applies for other characters as well. The show did try to give some of them character arcs, but they all fell flat and didn't amount to anything. Except for Jean, who goes from a cowardless person who looks out for number one to a more experienced person who still looks out for number one but understands what needs to be done And quite frankly, these two scenes show the best difference.
Why'd this have to happen now? Just one more day and I'd have been heading for the interior. Leave him. We can't do anything until we take care of her!
Surprisingly, though, we do have two characters who have a strong case of being slightly three-dimensional, and that's Sasha and Mikasa. Although Mikasa is the girl who barely shows emotions and who's madly in love with Eren and is shown to be nothing more than that, but that's her character. We even get to know her backstory. Now I'll ask you, do you know what Mikasa does on a daily basis? Following Eren. And do you know what Mikasa's thinking? Probably thinking about Eren. And do you know what Mikasa does when she's not around Eren? She's probably wondering what Eren is and is worried about him. And although this scene briefly appears on the final intro, but we get to see some cleavage. I mean, Mikasa depicted working out, which I could probably see her doing in her free time without sounding like I'm reaching. And if loyalty was a girl, it would be her. Now, as for Sasha, I realize now that we actually get her backstory in season 2, but I will ask you this. If there's a complex problem that needs to be solved, will Sasha know the answer? Of course not. But the girl has some good instincts. Although I don't appreciate them telling us this.
I have to give her credit. The girl's instincts are usually dead on. Especially.
We do get to see the scene which shows us that she has good instincts without the writers having to explain. So, for characters, AOT is gonna get a 3 out of 10, and yes, I'm being generous. Now, for dialogue, it's a straight 1 out of 10. I wanted to give it 0, but the people talk at least. Because for a show with so much dialogue, a lot of it is wasted and none of it is used fleshing out the characters or moving the plot forward. A lot of it is just them rehashing information that we already know, stating what just happened, or an information dump. And this is the type of shit that makes me believe that these writers think that we have smooth brains or something like that. I mean, most of us do, but goddamn, this is just horrible. The art style isn't necessarily something to write home about, but it wasn't as bad as the other animes out there. And it was very good for its time. Plus, the attention to detail was just chef's kiss. But the problem was that it wasn't consistent, asking for some like Into the Spider-Verse. But I'll give it a 5 out of 10, so it's good. Now, as for animation, I'll give it a 3 out of 10. While the movement isn't that bad, but there was this constant time where the camera would stop on an image and everything was left to the imagination. And I just hate these scenes. There were so many of them though. There were so many of them too. It is crazy. I'd say about 10 to 20% of the show is just filled with no animation at all. Just pictures and sound and it just ruined my immersion. So overall for the arts and animation, it's 3 out of 10. Overall, I think the show was very much rushed and it's a half-baked mess that needed a bit more time in the oven. I I didn't talk about how it sometimes sacrifices common logic and sense just to look cool and edgy, or like how the theme of the show, which is probably dying, gets used in such a bad way that by the end of the season, I'm totally desensitized to the whole matter and couldn't give a fuck if someone dies or not. And to add to that, the show goes out of its way to spoon feed us information, what we should think, and how we should feel about each scene or each character. Another thing that annoys me is that when it comes to plot twists and reveals, the show does a horrible job at it. Not that the plot twists themselves are bad, it's just that the execution for them is just horrible. As a kid, I was dumb and didn't realize that Annie was the female Titan until they told me. But seeing how they dedicated half an episode to her and just her, it ruined the shock that the scene could have delivered, all just to waste time with pointless dialogue. And speaking of time, I mentioned earlier that the pacing is all over the place, going from 5 years in a few seconds to multiple episodes passing within just a few hours. While there isn't a specific way to go about pacing, the show throws it all over the place. Also, often at times I felt that the episodes was just being dragged on for no reason other than to fill the runtime. Recaps of previous episodes led to some episodes starting at 5 minutes in, and that's without the pointless dialogue. And the show's like 25 episodes long. I was ready for it to end by episode 18. Anyway, although it didn't overstay its welcome, there were times I found myself checking the runtime, wondering when this shit was going to end. All in all, Attack on Titan Season 1 gets a 5 out of 10, making it mid. Now, this is my first critique or review or rating or whatever you want to call it. But I can tell you this, that this is my opinion, and the show's marker of value is whether or not it can keep you entertained. And also, it's okay to enjoy shit writing. And I need an outro.